I've been hating on Brad Crawford all week, guys. I'm sorry. We do a lot of stuff on things he writes because he does a lot of great work. A lot of times we tout what he does. Sometimes we hate on what he does, and I'm going to continue the hate train because he wrote an article yesterday on the top 16 all-time transfer quarterbacks. And Tennessee's Hendon Hooker was not on the list. Now, come on. Now, okay, there's some top ones here that I understand you would put at the top. Okay, Joe Burrow, no issue there. Transfer, won the Heisman national title. Baker Mayfield, no issue there. Won the Heisman. However you feel about Baker in the NFL. Cam Newton, no issue. Transfer, won the Heisman national title. Caleb Williams, no issue. Won the Heisman. I'm still pretty. Everybody I've named, I'm fine with. Even Jalen Hurts, I'm good with being on there. But okay, Joe, let me just name some other people on here real quick. I think Hendon Hooker has a case over Justin Fields. I think he's got a case over Russell Wilson. Rest in peace. We spoke about him yesterday. Ryan Mallett. He has a case over Ryan Mallett, but I don't want to get into that. Has a case over Colt Brennan. Scott Frost won a national title, but running the triple option at Nebraska. And Jake Coker won the national title as a game manager from Alabama, so I'm not counting that. And then you got Nick Marshall, Jeff George, Vince Ferragamo from Cal to Nebraska in 1976, and Nick Foles from Michigan State to Arizona. Come on. Are we to say that all these transfer quarterbacks are better than Hendon Hooker?
It's funny as you get to the top of the list, it's all the recent quarterbacks who transferred, like Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts. And then you get like 14 and 13. Like you said, Jake Coker, I guess, is kind of recent, 2015. But then you've got Jeff George, who won the Sammy Ball Trophy in 1989.
Right, exactly.
Nick Foles is 16. I can even understand that one a little bit just from a recency standpoint. But there's some guys on here like Vince Ferragamo, who was an All-American in 1976. Oh. And his only stat on here that's like jumping off the page is his 32 career rushing touchdowns ranked 10th in program history. So he wasn't even throwing the ball. He was running.
Yeah.
So I agree. I don't see how Hendon Hooker is not in like at least 16 on the list.
Right. I mean, let's just pull up Hendon Hooker's stats the last 2 years. I mean, we're talking about a guy who, I believe his first year he threw 31 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Last year he would have gone to New York were it not for the injury, and I still say he should have gone to New York. But yeah, completed 70% of his passes, averaged 9.5 yards an attempt, 27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. At Tennessee in 2 years, he had 58 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, and he ran for another 10 touchdowns and over 1,000 yards rushing, over 6,000 yards passing. I'm sorry. I don't know how you could leave Hendon Hooker off this list. Now, I think this goes to an interesting take, which is Hendon Hooker is the greatest transfer in Tennessee football history, isn't he? I don't think there's a close second.
No, I mean, he basically revived the program and put Josh Heupel and Tennessee back on the map. I mean, think about it. If they beat South Carolina and he stays healthy, they're probably competing for a playoff spot.
Oh, yeah. If they beat South Carolina, they're in the playoff, and he's in New York.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, he would basically – some of these guys on the list, he lists that they ranked 5th or 6th in Heisman voting. Well, Hooker did the same thing.
Yeah.
So then by that token, should he not be on – and we're not arguing that he should be above a guy like Joe Burrow who holds every record, won a championship. We're saying he should be above Nick Marshall or Jeff George because those guys are not – I mean, Jeff George has 1 sentence under his, and it's a future number 1 overall pick in the NFL. His 31 career touchdown passes with the Illinois ranked 10th all-time in program history.
So he's 10th in Illinois.
Yeah. So that's not something like to write home about. And it was – I agree. I think at least Hendon Hooker should be – I'd say he would probably fall. I would say 14th would be a good spot at least just because he's super recent and you don't know how much impact he has on the program long term, which I think Joe Milton will just leverage off of what Hendon Hooker did and then Nico after him, and it'll just keep rolling. But I get that he's – I don't know. I think he should be 14 or 15 at least.
I agree. I'm right around that level too, 14th or 15th of best transfer quarterbacks of all time. And I'm going down the list now, and Hooker should have been an All-American. I think we both agree with that. He kind of got robbed of All-American honors. but I don't believe there are junior college transfers that were All-Americans, but I don't really count junior college transfers unless they were at another school and went to junior college like Cam Newton. That's a different story. But outside of that, I mean, I'm going down the list of all-time All-Americans in Tennessee football history, and I don't know. I think Hendon Hooker should have been on there, so I have him as the best transfer. I think the closest second would be Alvin Kamara, right? It's Hendon Hooker and Alvin Kamara, and then it's everybody else.
Yeah, but unfortunately, Alvin Kamara was kind of handicapped in Tennessee's offense, so we never got to see the true, like the Alvin Kamara you see in the NFL right now. We didn't get to see that at Tennessee, which I really wish we would have, because it could have been very good.
Jaru, you just don't understand. Butch Jones knew what he was doing. He was so analytical driven, okay, and he had a chart on when to do things, and you just aren't on his level of intellect. Don't you know that?
I just don't understand the brick by brick. That's what it is.
Yes, exactly.
He was going brick by Alvin Kamara. Just wasn't the brick that he needed.
Inches make the chain. Well, and in the NFL, Alvin Kamara ain't one of the most life championships. I will say that. And I'm sorry, that's horrible to say, but
oh my gosh.
But
Hendon Hooker should 100% be on this list. I mean, what he did for Tennessee, and really Josh Heupel, I mean, revived a program that was dead and full of allegations to competing for a playoff spot in his second season, and then next season set up to do the same.
Yeah, and there's no doubt that if Joe Milton stayed, no disrespect to Joe Milton, but he wasn't ready to start in 2021. If Hendon Hooker doesn't come in, Tennessee's not going 7-6. They're probably 5-7 or something like that. There's a couple of games they lose if Hendon Hooker's not in there, particularly the Kentucky one. Is there a chance, would you say, that Joe Milton surpasses Hendon Hooker this year? Because, he would be a transfer too, coming from Michigan.
I mean, maybe. I don't think you can credit Joe Milton with reviving the program as much, because Hendon Hooker was the first to do it, kind of give Tennessee life, fill the stadium again. But obviously on the field, I think Joe Milton could compete if he plays how people are saying he's going to play this season. That one is a tough one just because they're back-to-back, both transfers. I mean, Hendon Hooker did a lot of stuff for Tennessee that'll be hard to replicate. But if somebody's going to replicate it as a transfer, I don't see why Joe Milton couldn't.
Yeah, no, that's true. And, with a couple more years, he's now been in the system 3 years, which may help. Although people say that, I think you and I are both, I don't think being in the system that long in Heupel's system means that much. I think you learn it. I think quarterbacks pick it up I think it's a pretty easy system to pick up for a quarterback.
I wouldn't, I agree with you kind of. I would say, obviously, having a year or two in the system helps. 3, I think at that point it's kind of redundant. I agree with you. It's not like they're doing anything super, super crazy. And Joe Milton came from Michigan, which, I mean, their offense isn't – Jim Harbaugh is supposed to be an offensive mastermind too. So it's not like he's immune to learning offenses.
Right, exactly. Good morning to you, Rocky Top Tom. Travis says that Tennessee should have made it the playoff over Alabama. Well, yeah, if either one would have been in it, it should have been Tennessee. But I think they got the playoff, the top 4 right. Quite honestly, I made the case last year they should have just had a top 2, and it should have been Georgia versus Michigan because those were the only 2 teams. BCS would have worked. But Lubab Kuda, yep, just what we were talking about. Could say Milton is the greatest at the end of the season. And yes, Rocket Top Tom, it is Caleb squared. It is. Fun fact, I am Caleb Calhoun, so my initials are also C squared. Some people used to call me that. Although my first name is actually John. So, Jerry, I don't know how well you know history, but John C. Calhoun was a really bad guy. My mom didn't know history. My mom and dad did not know history, named me that. I've trolled them about it since.
I don't know history either, so I have my research assignment for later.
Okay, well, John C. Calhoun was the guy that, after the slave trade ended in 1807, John C. Calhoun was making the case in 1845 that the slave trade should still continue. Not slavery itself, the slave trade, which even slave owners were like, okay, this is immoral and we shouldn't do it. Okay.
Yikes. So, he was the former vice president?
He was the vice president under Andrew Jackson, yeah. And then they had a big fight over the nullification crisis.
Well, you can change the name.
Yeah, it was.
Thanks the legacy.
He was not a good dude.